My neighbors have milk cartons full of blood in their basement, and I think my husband knows why. It all started when I woke up in the middle of the night and found a strange, suffocating weight on my chest like someone was sitting on me. I could make out an outline of someone's figure above me, their back outlined by the orange light from the street lamps seeping through the window. I tried to scream for help or turn my head to look at my husband, but I couldn't move. I didn't regain control of my body until after the weight had lifted, and I heard a deep, male grunt from a man pulling himself off me. I heard his footsteps too. I saw his silhouette leave through the door. And it was only hours later of laying in that same position that I felt I could move again. It started with a pinpricking sensation through my toes and fingers, then spread through my entire body, like the feeling you get when your leg falls asleep and you have to wake it back up. I immediately went to my husband and shook him awake. He was distraught and confused, asking me to slow down, to tell him what happened. He was so scared by my hysterics, he was moved to tears. Even still, he didn't believe me. He said he was right next to me. He'd have woken up if someone came inside our room. He assured me it was all a dream and rubbed my back to soothe me until I could fall back asleep. But a week later, the same paralysis came for me. It was after an argument with my husband over finances. The same terror, the same feeling of someone sitting on my chest, then getting up and leaving the room. This time I saw something in their hand. A knife? I couldn't know. It was far too dark. My husband again told me it was just a bad dream, that I couldn't afford to keep stressing myself out so much over money. Ever since I lost my job, we've been struggling to make rent. My husband keeps telling me he'll take care of it, he'll take care of us. I think that's some weird masculine bullshit from his time. He's 43, I'm 26. That's the other problem with all this. I'm pregnant, 5 months around this time. The financial strain had been weighing on my psyche and causing me so much stress that I'd resorted to my own means of making money for us since I couldn't seem to find another real job. I'd been participating in paid clinical trials in order to make ends meet for us. My husband never asked where the extra money was coming from. He had no idea. He's always been so protective over me. He would have died knowing I was selling my body to Big Pharma. It was a clinical drug trial for preeclampsia, and all they did was give me a small pill, take my blood and my vitals, and send me on my way once a week. Maybe the pills were causing these sleep paralysis episodes. I wasn't sure, but I could never confide in my husband about it. Anyway, a week ago, I went over to my neighbor's house with my husband for a little Halloween party. My neighbors Sarah, 40F, and Tom, 40M, are both so sweet. They left baked goods on our porch every Saturday since I announced my pregnancy. Sarah checked on me almost daily, texting me asking me how I am, how I'm feeling, if I'm having any morning sickness. Their kindness makes this whole thing all the stranger. At the Halloween party, I asked Sarah for a soda. Everyone else was having beer, but, she told me they have some in her outside fridge, down the stairs in the unfinished basement/garage. So I headed away from the party, fumbled for the string light, and made my way down the creaky wooden steps to the basement. The floor was concrete and cold on my bare feet. So I tiptoed past Tom's latest mechanical mess to the kitchenette and old, rusted white fridge in the far corner. The first thing I noticed here was a red splatter of what looked to be blood on the inside of the wash basin. There were power tools and saws and such down here, as the basement is also Tom's workshop. He could have cut his finger, washed his hands, and not the sink. I shrugged it off and opened the fridge. I was immediately hit with a strange whiff of iron as I swung the door open. There were at least 3 dozen milk cartons coating the shelves inside, with 2 Sprites in the fridge door. I don't know what compelled me then to reach for the milk. Maybe I was really thirsty for it. Some pregnancy craving. Maybe I knew something was wrong. I had some intuition about it. But I grabbed a carton. It was heavy, and the liquid inside didn't slosh the way I expected it to. It sounds strange, like something you wouldn't be able to notice, but I did. I placed it down on the single countertop of the kitchenette, found a glass in the top shelf of the cabinet above, unscrewed the cap of the milk carton, and began to pour. What came out wasn't milk. It was red. It was blood. I vomited in the sink. Tom must have heard me, or knew I was digging where I shouldn't have been. He came down and held back my hair while I emptied my stomach, whispering calm words like easing a broodmare. He called down my husband, who took me back upstairs. He threw my coat over my shoulders and talked quietly with Tom and Sarah by the door. She'll be fine. Just scared is all. No worries. Thank you, yes. I stood there with nothing to say, eyes wide, unsure of what to make of it all. My first ridiculous thought was that Tom and Sarah were vampires. It wasn't until we were walking back across the street to our house that I was able to ask Tom, what was that? Tom looked at me strangely, his brow furrowed. Why were you poking around where you shouldn't be? Are you serious? They had blood in their milk cartons. Tom sighed, pulled away from me. He was obviously frustrated. They own a farm, Liv. Okay. You don't know how slaughtering an animal works, do you? He was so angry. I could see his hands bunched in a fist, shaking slightly. What are you talking about? They drain the pigs of blood after slaughter. I chewed on this, shaking my head, both of us standing at odds with each other in the middle of the road. So, are you trying to tell me they filled milk cartons with pig's blood? Yes. Why the hell would they do that? Because it's a thickening agent high in protein. It's used in a wide variety of dishes. You've probably eaten it before and haven't even known it. I stared at my husband indignantly, feeling shame rising up in me. The last thing I wanted to do was apologize. But here I was saying sorry in the middle of the street just to get us back inside the house. My sleep paralysis stopped for a few months after. At my 7th month of pregnancy, it started again. Once a week, usually Sunday nights. I would take my prenatal vitamins before bed and wake up around midnight to find it almost impossible to breathe. At this point, I was no longer sleeping on my back. I was sleeping on my side. Still, the sleep paralysis demon, or man, would straddle my shoulders, his back rising above me like a mountain, so I couldn't see anything but the bottom of his feet. Bare, black soles, long toenails that scrapped against the sheets. Dirty jeans. Sure enough, it should have been a dream. But one night I woke, crying once again, and after I settled, I found dirt rubbed off on the white pillowcase by my head. A deep red stain on the bed. That same morning in the shower, I checked myself for any hints of damage. When I was paralyzed like that, I couldn't feel a damn thing except the relentless weight on top of me, the inability to fully breathe. The only injuries on me were the bruises on the inside of my elbows on both sides, right where I had weekly blood draws at the clinical trial. The clinical trial my husband still didn't know about, though he should have seen the discoloration on my arms when we had sex, which now was more and more frequent. Leading up to my birth, my husband's behavior toward me became even stranger. He worried incessantly over me, taking me to sleep trials which revealed no abnormalities, arguing with doctors that something was wrong, describing my dizziness, my fatigue, the bruising on my arms the first time I realized he'd noticed. The doctor said this was all normal for someone during pregnancy, especially nearing the end. I remember at the end of my 7th month of pregnancy, I again had a bout of sleep paralysis. This time, during it, I swear I could hear my husband crying softly. It was hard to make out over the grunts and heavy breathing above me. I asked him over breakfast what he'd been crying about. He was very, very quiet and told me only that he had a bad dream that I was being hurt. Maybe, at the time, I thought my paranoia a problem. Either way, I abated. I no longer trusted my husband, nor did I trust my neighbors, even my own parents. I stopped eating any food anyone made for me and cooked only for myself. I lost weight, became even paler and weaker than before. I stopped attending the clinical trials, and my husband came home with more money. Having recently gotten a promotion I didn't believe, as he clocked out of work hours early every day to come check up on me. Except, strangest of all, my sleep paralysis stopped completely. Instead, I slept dreamless, and it was nearly impossible to wake me. I slept for 12, 13 hours at a time without waking up once. One morning in the shower, weeks after I'd stopped attending the clinical trials and getting regular blood draws, I found strange bruising over my inner elbow, a small pinprick over the vein. In the dark, I hadn't been able to see the lack or presence of bruising, but under the bathroom lights it was there. I confronted my husband about it. He said I probably injured myself somehow. I should go get checked out. I shouldn't be bruising so easily. I told him that it looked like a needle wound, traced the vein's blueness. He looked at me so strangely. Then his phone rang, and he disappeared into the bedroom. My suspicions had grown intense. Something was wrong. No more sleep paralysis, sure, but someone was visiting me in the night still. I knew it. A few weeks before my due date, I didn't take my prenatal vitamins. It was a Monday. It was midnight, and I was pretending to sleep. I didn't feel the usual unrelenting fatigue I did late in the evening. But still awake, I saw him come in. I closed my eyes quick, heard his heavy breathing over me. Then he pulled the bedsheet over my face, whispered in a rough voice, "All right, girl." I recognized that voice. He reached under the blankets, his hand brushing mine above the mattress. I made a small noise of fear, flinched away. He froze. Then he put a hand on my shoulder, moved the bedsheet away from my face, and even though my eyes were closed, I could feel him studying me, watching me. Once I calmed myself, he continued, taking my wrist in his hand and holding me inside with his 2 fingers. He was wearing gloves, nitrile, and he was taking my pulse, I realized, counting to a minute. The longest minute of my fucking life. Then he placed a hand on my belly, and it took everything in me not to scream. Something cold replaced his fingers, and he held it there. My stomach churned, and my baby reared up inside me. I was gonna throw up. No, I couldn't. "That's it," he whispered to me, to no one. I realized then how I recognized the voice. Tom. It sounded just like Tom. That was all I could take. I jolted out of my sleep and upright, my eyes meeting his in the dark. Sure enough, Tom was staring back at me. I screamed at him, and he raised his gloved hands. There was a stethoscope around his neck like he was cosplaying a fucking doctor. My husband shot out from the other side of the bed. For a moment, him and Tom just stared at each other. Then my husband raised his voice in a way I'd never heard before. "Get out! Get out!" Tom shot out of the room quicker than I could process. My husband chased him out, his shouts and threats echoing through the house. When he came back, I told him we should call the cops. He said no, that wasn't a good idea. He would deal with it. He took a bat from underneath the bed and headed out with it. I tried to stop him, but he left out the front door and didn't return until the next morning. By then, I'd found the milk carton laying on its side by my fallen bedsheets. A plastic funnel on the ground next to it. I felt sick. So fucking sick to think about all that blood in Tom's fridge. My blood. I went to the bathroom and emptied my stomach till I couldn't anymore. When my husband came home, he told me he'd taken care of it. There was blood splattered on his face and the bat. He washed it off in the kitchen sink. I was silent, at a loss for words. Afterward, I watched him put locks on all the doors, draw the shades, and set the alarms. "Did you kill him?" I asked. My husband just shook his head no. As he locked our bedroom window, he said, "Just to be safe, okay." For the rest of the day, we cooped ourselves up inside, watching movies, taking it easy, as he put it. Laying low. I asked him what the hell Tom would want with cartons of blood. My husband looked wildly uncomfortable, said that men are scary. It could have been anything. Could have been selling it on the dark web. That shit makes a lot of money, supposedly. He kissed my forehead and pulled me close. I asked him for the second time, then if we should call the police. He didn't reply. Over the next week, he told me I needed to stay home, that he'd go out for groceries, meds, etc. Almost my entire pregnancy, he'd been pushing for a home birth, but now he was adamant about it. Meanwhile, I was having second thoughts. What if something went wrong? What if Tom came by? Whenever I shared these concerns with my husband, he got angry. Eventually, after a heated argument, I asked him if he planned to keep me cooped up like a dog till I gave birth or died. He just glared at me. I said I was going to leave for a little while, give him some time to work through things. As soon as I did, he grabbed me by the arm and begged me to stay. He burst into tears, saying that everything he did for me. That he was sorry for how he'd been treating me, how he'd scared me, but he was scared. God, he was scared. He asked me to stay with him. So I did. When he went to take a shower that night, I again checked our bedroom for anything Tom might have left behind. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Nothing on the floor, of course. It had been a week after all. I would have tripped over anything left over. But under the bed was a spool of rope, cable ties, duct tape. My husband and I had never participated in bondage or anything of the sort. That was my final straw. I had a horrible, horrible feeling. I called my mom and asked her if I could come over. She said, of course. I tried to go out the front door, but it was locked from the outside. I didn't even know that was possible. I tried the back door, locked again. At this point, I was so panicked I started to cry. I checked the kitchen window, locked. Finally, the giant office window was open. 8 months pregnant, I hauled my ass out the window and dropped 5 feet into the garden. And I ran, caught an Uber, and made my way to my mom's place. I've been here 2 days now. I have endless missed calls from my husband. I don't know what the hell to say to him. I'm not sure if I think he's just paranoid, or if he's somehow a part of this whole thing with Tom. What the fuck should I do? Should I go back home? I don't want to give birth without my husband, but he's scaring me. Tom is a whole other problem I'm too afraid to fully confront. I'm thinking of going back home tomorrow and explaining myself to my husband, getting answers to the questions that have been plaguing me, and leaving if I need to. I don't want to do anything too drastic like call off a marriage before I know the whole story, but I guess I'm afraid to know what the hell the real story is. What do you think? Should I try and fix things before I give birth? Should I call the police?